we are talking about goal-directed design and how to take your product next level. So before we start, let me explain a bit who we are and what we do. So I'm Reshika Fernando, product designer at Sysdig, even though my name is always pronounced wrong. So I'm very used to it. And this is Andrea Scianò, front-end engineer at Sysdig. I just want to ask, how many product designers are there in the audience today? Nice. Because sometimes I'm the only one when I go to a conference, so it's nice to see there are many of us. So let me give a brief intro of what we are going to talk today. So briefly, I will talk about Sysdig and its customers and Sysdig user personas. And we will build a small feature together also. Together with that, we will do some design collaboration, how the design collaboration at Sysdig works. And Andrea will explain the engineering part. And I'll tell you the takeaways. So, Sysdig. Sysdig is a SaaS company providing infrastructure, security, and monitoring solutions for container and microservice-friendly architecture. At Sysdig, our target is to provide a secure and reliable environment for all your cloud deployments. So, as you may see from the presentation, our product divides into two parts, Sysdig Secure and Sysdig Monitor. Inside Sysdig Secure and inside Sysdig Monitor, we have other components, which make this product a very vast product. So, exploring our customers, when we are about to build a feature, sometimes Andrea comes to me and says, Reshika, so I have this customer who wants these goals to achieve from their feature. And I say, OK, I also have this customer who wants to do some other goals. So sometimes, who is this customer? So more extensive this product is, more it was hard to us to understand what are the goals we want to achieve from our feature, and also who are the customers exactly. So how do you think we will resolve this problem? Yes, it are those boring personas that you all may know. But at Sysdig, these personas are not so boring as you think, because we have 7 personas, which does not represent one-to-one users. But more or less, it's like user goals each user wants to achieve. So, for example, one user persona represents several dimensions. If I take DevOps, so it represents also a DevOps, a dev teams, and also a dev manager. So user personas summarize goals that each user wants to achieve. And sometimes it's a group of goals in different dimensions. At Sysdig, we have a culture where from our CEO to our intern, we all value these user personas. So when we are talking to a customer, we don't ask, OK, what you want to get done, but more or less, what you want to achieve, what are your goals. So I want to walk you through building a small feature that we have done recently. Well, it's not very recent, but if you don't count the last 2 years, it's very recent. So back in 2019, after we have updated these user personas, we needed to update our alert editor, because we felt like, OK, when you have goals, sometimes not always these goals map to your feature. So you need to obviously redesign, revamp, and also sometimes you just take the feature out. But what we have done was updating the user personas. We wanted to redesign our interface, but also we want to upgrade our framework from Ember to React. So what exactly happens at Sysdig when we want to redesign or bring a new feature to live? Where do we start? We have those analytical tools which studies our user behaviors, which also give us user customer feedbacks, which will help us to develop features. So these will help us to identify the users and the goals. From those, we are able to identify the user personas. So in this case, in this case, we have 2 user personas. Are there any infrastructure engineers today in the audience, by any chance? OK, too bad. Oh, OK, good. So you will be a potential user of Sysdig. So in this case, for alert editor, we have two user personas, Dimitri and Vivian. Dimitri is an infrastructure engineer who logs to Sysdig monitor time to time, especially when he gets a notification from an event regarding his infrastructure. While Vivian is is a developer who wants to monitor and who wants to create some alerts into Sysdig monitor to monitor her custom application. So once we have identified these user personas, how do we put this into action? So at Sysdig, I like to call this DPA in action. You may wonder, OK, what is DPE? If it's like a tool, if it's like a software, or is it something that you can eat? Sometimes I wish I can eat, because you will know why. So DPE represents designers, product managers, and engineers. When we want to build a feature, we get together, we brainstorm, we do several workshops, we create prototypes, and also we create some of the plans. How do we want to release this? So we create releasing plans, and also one of the main things we do is tracking. So those are the analytical data that will give us the future information to improve our feature. But thank God we are doing everything in remote, because else I will see a lot of chairs and desks flying, because having designers, product, and engineer in the same room talking about the same feature that they want to achieve, it is always not so easy. So if I summarize our design process, it's based on search, DP collaboration, prototype, and snap testing. So as you may see, those arrows going move on, you can see those arrows going backward as well. So as you know, not always you get to do the feature at once. There are times that you have to come back and revisit your feature. You have to revisit your goals. You have to revisit your prototype. And finally, hopefully, when you have a solid design, you move forward. But there are times that you have to come back again. So now I'll pass the word to Andrea, who will explain the engineering.
Thank you, Reshika. So I would like to bring you inside Sysdig. But before proceeding, I would like to ask you, how many front-end engineers are we today? Nice. OK, so maybe we are going to like it. So Reshika mentioned that we had to revamp our alert editor. So let's try to have a similar example about that. So let's say that we have a page, a complex page, which basically has a sidebar on the left and then some list items, and also a content box on the right with an header, displaying the title, whatever, and the fields, some fields and some buttons. So this is the logical representation of the page, where the page itself is the topmost component, and then we have, again, the sidebar, and yada, 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 and so on. The items and the fields are the most nested components. And so if you use to develop application in React, you know that the classic way to bring data between components is passing props. So if I have some props that stay inside my topmost components, like the page that we saw, and we want to send them to the bottom, to the most nested components, like the items and the fields, we need to go through all the hierarchy and pass data from components to components. But this is bad. This can bring to some problem that today we are trying to solve, and I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show how we solve this problem. So the problem that we are talking about is called prop drilling, which basically is passing a bunch of props between components. Sometimes those components don't need to use those props anymore, those props at all, but they just need to forward the props to other components that are children. And this is bad because it's error prone. So let's say that a developer changes a name in some level of the hierarchy, and then it forgot to change the name in the other component. You have a mismatch, so the props don't match anymore, and you have a bug. This is bad not just for large-scale application, but also for small application, because the code is less maintainable, and it can become a mess very soon. So we have some solutions, not just one. Likely we have several solutions. We could use a state management library, such as Redux. All of you front-end engineers, you know what I'm talking about. But we can also leverage the context API that React itself provides. Or we could use a technique, which is component composition, which divides in other two subcategories, which is container components and specialized components. But today, we are going to focus on the context API. So thanks to the context API, we can apply what is called the provider pattern. Actually, in Sysdig, since the feature is brand new, we adopted this pattern in a better way. So if you search over internet, you can also find that under the name provider pattern hook, because we used that pattern using some hooks. So we have a logical representation that we already saw, but this time there is something different. So now we don't need to pass the data down all through the hierarchy, but the components that need to access such data, they can just read that from a new object, which is called context. So what is a context? A context is an object containing some state, some information, and every object that needs to access to this information can query that object right away. But let's try to have a better idea of that. I don't like to show too much code in a presentation because I think that it's hard to read, but we have just a few slides with the code, but you will have a small surprise at the end of the presentation. So here we are. So first of all, we need to create the context, so the object that will contain our information. The state that this context will have within is the state that it's on top of the screenshot. And let's focus on the page title. The page title is an information. It's a string that needs to be shown on the header of the page. So we create the context using the create context function that is provided by React itself, so you don't have to install anything. And then we said that we use the hook to implement this pattern, and we'll see why. But first of all, we create this hook, which is called use up page state. And thanks to this hook, the components that need to access such data, they will be able to do that. But now that we have the context, we also need a new thing, a new component that provides some context to its children. So we need to create the context provider. In this case, we called it app page state provider because it provides the page state that we saw before. Inside the page state provider, we define what is the value that we would like the components have once they query the context. So the value, in this case, the page state plus the dispatch, and we'll see why we also provide the dispatch inside the context. So now that we have the provider, we try to use it. So let's assume that we want to build this topmost page component. You see that the code is very clean. So we use the provider, and then its children are the sidebar and the page content, which is the box that we saw, the content box that we saw on the right of the page. And so no props is passed at all inside this code. So the code is very clean. We don't need to pass anything. We just have the components. Now, let's assume that we want to display the title inside the header. So the title, the information about the title stays inside the context, and we want the header able to access the context in order to display it. So we use the hook that we created before just to pick the title from the context and display it. Just that. You see that the header doesn't accept any prop at all. So we just use the header, access the context, and then the context returns the title that we want to display. But what if, instead of just reading, we would like to also write inside the context? So we want to update the information. For instance, we want to change the title after some action. So when our VVN, our persona, clicks on an element on the left sidebar, we would like to have the title on the header changing. So you see that as soon as Vivian clicks on a list item, we run the function that triggers a dispatch, and that dispatch, the dispatch returner, is the dispatch returner from the context. And thanks to that, we can trigger an action called change title with the information about the title within. What happens now is not enough. So we need a mechanism, in this case a reducer, that takes the action, recognizes which is the action that has been triggered, and then updates the state by returning a new state with the new information. And in this way, as soon as the list item inside the sidebar is clicked, the information of the new title is sent with the action is taken into account, we have a new state, and then the context update the title. And then the header that is displaying the title gets updated for free because it's reading the new value. So without passing any prop at all. Of course, everything, as usual, comes with some disadvantages, every time for everything. So I wouldn't use this pattern if you have, for instance, to keep track of a complex state among different modules, among different pages. So I would say that it is okay to use it if you have a page, even a complex page, but don't abuse it. Also, this doesn't replace Redux, because Redux is basically adopting the same pattern, but with asteroids. And yeah, it's tested a lot. So if you have a huge state that you have to manage among different modules with a general application, then I would stick with Redux. And as promised, since I don't like to show too much code, as I said, we developed a tiny application on purpose for this conference. So you can scan the QR code, you can dig inside the code, you can download it, you can run it locally, whatever, so you can play with it, and you can see how the provider pattern is used for real. So that's it. I mean, those are our contacts. Of course, Sysdig is always hiring, so if in case you are interested, I mean, we use Jira. We are thankful, so we also have database. So I think that you will find the path that you need in order to shine. So if you're interested, you're welcome to reach out. And
so, as you may know, it took us roughly 20 minutes to tell you the takeaways. So the takeaways are goal-directed personas leads to goal-directed solutions, and design collaboration between product and engineering gives your product to next level. And also keeping your code architecture clean, splitting between visualization and business logic. So
not yet. I would like to close the presentation with a famous quote from a famous Italian advertising. We like to say in Sysdig that if you take care of the things that you cannot see, also the things that you can see, so the things outside will be nice. That's why we wanted to present from inside to outside and the other way around. So, puliti dentro e belli fuori. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. We have time for one question. Otherwise, I'll ask, 'cause I have one question.
Yeah.
Did you evaluate React Query?
Yeah.
And
we used another, so long story short, we came, as Reshika explained, from Ember, and back from?
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. No, and we decided to change framework because it was convoluted and so it's a long story. But at that time, we basically used Ember data, which is something used with Ember, so it's different compared to React Query. So we developed our fetching library in order to fetch information, and it works pretty well. So we didn't have any problem so far. So I think that we developed it before React Query. That's why we are still using our solution. But yeah, that's a valid library. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm liking it very much.
Yeah, but we use React table for the tables, which comes from the same
Cool.
same creator. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.